Hello and welcome
Woo!
to another Band Batch Music Chat. Today we're going to be talking about Andor, episode 10, which really fucked me up.
Yeah.
Yeah? What do you mean? What do you mean? Like emotionally?
Well, I can't swim, so I was really, at that moment, it felt like both a gut punch and also like literally that is such a big nightmare that I've had since I was a child.
Wow.
Just in every way, I felt like I left after that episode. I was like, "Fuck! I need to learn how to swim. I need to try again. I need to try again."
Sorry, I mean to laugh.
I mean, not that I'll be in that
Yeah, because
situation,
if you're ever,
but it's sort of like the same in the same vein of like I still haven't put together my earthquake kit, where it's like, sure, it's not
Sure.
like
Yeah.
earthquakes are going to happen every day, but if I'm ever in a situation where I should need to know how to swim, then like I avoid water activities and stuff in real life. I do. Not only because I don't really like the water, but also I'm like, well, if something kind of goes wrong and something with my life jacket
Totally.
doesn't work out, like I don't really feel comfortable fending for myself in the water. I'm not comfortable. So, yeah, anyway.
Yeah. I just remember like when I was in the car with my dad on the way to swim lessons when I was a kid. And I would just be like, Dad, why? Why do you have to bring me every week to this thing? He's like, James, like one day you might be in a dystopian water surrounded futuristic prison in which which there's only one way to escape. Um,
Damn it, James.
I mean,
and
it's
I
not
and the
like
worst-
Andy
seriously.
Serkis. It's not like Andy Serkis looked at the screen and like broke the fourth wall and said, "This one's for you, Xanthe."
yeah. And also,
But
like,
that
I think Cassian would have, like, tried to carry him in the water if that's possible,
Yeah.
if he hadn't
Mhm.
been knocked
pushed off.
over
Mhm.
before
Yeah.
hearing.
yeah.
And then even, I mean, it's interesting that only two of them were running along the. Oh yeah, after the
Right.
ocean planet, you've got the snow-covered Arctic tundra um, that you've got to run across barefoot. But only two
Yeah.
of them were, and that implies I mean, the positive way to look at that is that Cassian and his friend, whose name I can't remember,
Melshi.
that they
Melshi.
are just
Melshik.
awesome. Melshi, that they're just really good swimmers, really athletic, awesome at that.
Right.
But another way to look at it is like that not many of them even successfully made it to, I mean,
Right.
that's a really long way to swim. I was so I had a so Xanthe, I felt for you because we were just talking about like the water and swimming, but at the same time I was looking at it was like I'm like a fantastic swimmer, and that would be really
You are?
hard. Like that distance I can see like I'm a huge fan of like going out like at the tide and trying to like fight
Oh
the waves. I think
my
that's
Mm.
God. How
awesome.
are you?
um
Yeah.
and but and that was what I was thinking. I was like, man, so like if they're like after running
Right?
up 8 flights of prison stairs, then
Yeah.
having
It's like a
to
triathlon.
oh
It is.
I think I
I
think it's something I love the most about this show is just how kind of realistic and unlike caring they are for like
Yes.
the situation, like uncaring in the sense of like no one's safe. It's almost like Game of Thrones. Like no one is safe. Like no character. We spend time building up a character only for them to get shot immediately with
Yeah.
like no grace kind of a thing. And then like exactly, I want to think that Kino might pop back and like looks like he survived and we have one of those
Right.
moments. But like having kind of gotten used to the show, I'm kind of like, yeah, no. I'm more
Yeah.
leaning
Well,
towards
they didn't show his
Christina's
death.
point of like, yeah, they didn't show his death, but they also didn't show the death of 300 or 5,000 other people for only
Yeah,
Cassian
that's true.
and Melshi
That's
to
true.
survive. So
And they
it's
didn't
like,
show much to my embarrassment, they haven't showed the reappearance of what's his name? The general or the lieutenant from the Aldani mission.
No, not
that
yet.
we
Yeah.
never really saw die. So there are a couple Gorn, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think they're leaving it open in some ways. I think Andy Serkis even said something on like in an interview where he was basically like, "Well, we didn't see him die, so he totally could be back." You know, he kind of said that. So
Yeah.
so
He might.
yeah, Justin with the what'd you say?
I'll say really fast. He might, because he's smart. I mean, he might realize like, oh,
Exactly.
I can't get out this way. There's obviously flight craft.
Mm,
Like, and there's probably one other person who can't swim on the 5,000 prison, 5,000 person
right.
prison. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe he'll steal a flight craft and he'll like swoop in and save Cassian and uh, what's his name again? I'm gonna write the name down this time.
Melshi.
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 But yeah, Justin, with the realism, I'm realizing it's like it's very here we go, Xanthe.
Xanthe's doing it again.
It's very it's not super common in Star Wars that I've for myself at least, where I'm like imagining myself in the scenario that they're in and like like feeling that sense of like I imagine, oh my god, what would it be like if I had to swim like a mile after I did that, and then you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's usually the scenarios are so outlandish or so not or maybe just presented with like not as heavy stakes that I'm usually like, I'm usually not in that. I'm never like, oh man, oh, what if I was holding a laser sword and there was another guy, a scarier guy with a scarier laser sword across the room from me? You know what I mean? Like I'm not like feeling like empathetic to Luke Skywalker. I'm just like, oh crap, how are you gonna get out of that, Luke? But in this situation, I'm like, oh, I could totally imagine like being lost in the middle of the ocean and being like, oh god, the only way I'm gonna survive is if I swim a mile now, and that's horrifying,
Yeah.
So for real, I like how there's little scenarios like that in this show. So
It's really well considered. Xanthe, I think you're muted, or your microphone isn't.
Oh yeah, I am muted.
on
Sorry.
record.
Let us know in the
There you
chat if you can or can't swim, or if you're like you can swim but you don't think you could swim that whole like yeah, just I'm curious because I don't think it's like a binary. Oh, you can either swim or you can't swim. Because on Discord also someone was saying like, even for him who could, the person who was sending the chat, who can swim, even then he was saying that it looked really scary and hard, even for someone who can swim. And so,
imagine adrenaline kicks in a little bit though.
yeah, but then
like
you might
you're just
also
like-
then you might also burn out quicker. I don't know though. It seemed like Cassian and Melshi still had were still running on adrenaline when they were on land, but I mean, well, we do know that they were in that camp because they were labor worthy, so they must have some level of physical stamina, perhaps, already. And I think that's
Cassian also like grew up next to the river, right? Like we get to see that
Yeah.
well, yeah.
part of his childhood where like the water was part of his upbringing, so he might be like a Christina, where he's like, where he's meant to go out into the
Well, the thing is,
Scary.
Christina is from Texas. If anything, I have no excuse for not being able to swim. I was born in Hawaii. My family is from Australia, Greece, by the beach, Cambodia. I
That's kinda
have lived by the
hilarious,
beach pretty much my whole life, the coast of California.
Yeah.
It's a little bit shocked. And I went to swimming lessons. I did do swimming lessons like 3 times.
You did do swimming lessons?
Yes, this is like why
Wait.
I know. This is why this is like
Yeah.
it's not even that I haven't
This is-
tried. It's like I have tried many times and can't
Yeah.
swim.
This is like the fact that I never wore my retainer after I got braces, and now whenever my parents see me and I smile, they're like, my mom's like, ugh, I spent so much money on those braces. I'm like, thanks, mom.
But the thing is, like, I can swim. Like, when I say I can't swim, I don't mean, like, at all. I just mean, like, I can swim. Like, if I'm in the middle of the swimming pool, I can swim far enough to just get to the side.
Oh, okay.
Like, doggy paddling or
That's right.
just doing whatever. I can't go past,
Right.
like, 10 seconds or something. It's,
You
like,
can't
very
get into
weird.
like formation and do the whole thing, right?
Yeah, like but the thing is, like, I've done all the drills. Oh my God, swimming lesson drills. You do like, you on the kick, you do your feet, then you do your hands. And, like, I can do the drills just fine, but like putting it together, I can't do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we should have a band, like a band batch. We should all get like
Let's have a
those.
pool party.
Oh God.
Yeah, pool party, band batch
Band
pool
batch
party.
pool
And we
party.
should all get. We
I'm
should
gonna
all
be
get
crying
the
the whole.
like
I'm
the.
just gonna be sobbing.
We should all get like the breathing apparatuses that the Jedi use in
Yes.
in Phantom Menace, so that Xanthe, if Xanthe drowns or sinks to the bottom, at least we'll have
Yeah, I think
We'll
it's
just get a
psychological.
big like
I think a lot of it is
Star Destroyer
psychological.
floaty.
Okay, Matthew says I was a lifeguard when I was a teenager. Holy, okay, so you're a good swimmer. It was a good job for a teenager to make a little bit over minimum wage, so I'm a good swimmer. Yeah, to be a lifeguard, yeah. I can swim, but I don't think I could make that. I'd make that distance. Jeannie says I took swimming lessons for years, and I too am a weak swimmer. I can do it, but not for long. Yeah, okay, that sounds like me. So, what I think, the reason I think it's so interesting that this was thrown into the plot line was because they are all ostensibly physically labor worthy. Like, you would think, that people who are capable of that much manual labor are just have the tools needed in their body to do a certain amount of physical activities, including swimming, which people take for granted. But so to see, like, and you could see that most people kind of just did it. That most people seem to jump and like, but for him, clearly it was just not. It was like he's physically fit, physically labor worthy or whatever, but can't swim. And for me, like.
Right.
The context in which I took swimming lessons was like, well, first I took just swimming lessons, at the community college or whatever, community school. I don't know what it was. Because my parents were like, what the hell? You should know how to swim. I should mention that when I was young, I witnessed my brother almost drowning. So that possibly really
Yeah.
terrified me from a young age.
Yeah.
So then swimming lessons, whatever, I didn't do very well. And then I was thrown into like sports camp growing up at Cal State Long Beach. It was called 49er camp. And like, it was like daycare camp for the summer. And we would do like tennis, basketball. We do like all these sports. And every day we had to also swim as part of it. And so I did that 2 or 3 years. Did not do very well. One summer I made a little bit of progress, but it's really the fear. It's like the fear of the water, I think, for me, because it's like a chest tightness that I get, and it's like kind of a panic that I get when the water gets like above here. And I remember I'd be like, I'd get in the water and I'd be like, I need to take my inhaler. So clearly there's like a psychological thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it. Like I was saying, like even like I'm a really good swimmer, but like I also have a deep fear of the ocean in a way. Like and that's like one of the reasons I like it. It feels like conquering something that's like I feel like the ocean is the most brutal, terrifying thing on Earth, maybe that I have access to. Like I'm not gonna, I mean, like pending like a volcano, but like the waves are huge and the ocean does what it wants, and it has this like the physics of the ocean are such that like if it's like you could swim forever and stay in the same place if the waves are organized that way. It's like a really horrifying thing. And even when you make it to the shore, sometimes it's not even like it's not like a romantic, beautiful, like, oh, I arrive on the shore. It's like you get like tumbled like a rock on the seashore. Like it's pretty horrible. Like, and for some reason, I really like that. Specifically in the context of the ocean, because it's like it's like me, my thrill seeking side or something like that. Like it feels like climbing a mountain every time. So I can't imagine starting that far out and trying to get in. Like the waves are huge.
Try to get in, right?
Like it's just, I don't know. Like yeah, it's really interesting. I think so. I'm also saying like I think the fear is a huge component. And we should have a pool party where we just like put our toes in the water and
how fun would that be? Like we're at like we do one of these Bad Batch streams, but we're all on the side of a pool with microphones. And then the three of us conspire to throw Xanthe into the pool at some point. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
Ah,
just kidding.
Oh no.
Very rude.
no, we can't do that.
Matthew, I like what you said. A good swimmer should be able to help someone who doesn't know how to swim as long as they don't panic to get them to shore. I was thinking about that. Like, I was thinking, like, if Kino can just stay calm and let himself kind of float passively, I was wondering if, people could have possibly, helped him along as long as he was
Right.
just sort of like, just, not fighting against them.
They should have wore those boots. Those boots look super buoyant.
Yeah, someone was saying
what-
that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Matthew.
really clever about the buoyant boots.
That should be insulation, not isolation in the shoe. Oh, yeah. My headcanon is that the insulation in the shoes are buoyant. Kino went back and
Oh,
wrapped a bunch of
Matt
shoes
said
together.
that. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Um,
So anyway,
Yeah. Well, if you think of, I was gonna say, when you think about it too, it's not just like him being able to stay calm. It's despite everyone working together to get out, I didn't feel like anyone was really working together. They were just trying to get out.
Exactly.
So it was this kind of this like mob mentality of just go, and with like
Yeah.
100 people, trolls trying to swim in the same direction. I don't know if you've ever been around like a bunch of bicycles going in the same direction all together. Like there's no movement, and any small movement, you destroy the whole thing. It's with all that happening. I mean, it's funny because we got this great speech from Kino saying like, if you see someone lost, help each other, and then like 2 minutes later, two people just trip and get trampled. And no, I thought it was gonna be a moment of like, come on, brother, let's go, and like they pick up and carry them kind of a thing. It's like, no, they just got trampled. It looked
Right.
like. So it's like clearly no one was helping each other.
It is very interesting how that played out, especially considering the music that was going alongside. Well, actually, first I want to read this comment from Carrie24. I took swimming lessons just a few years. I never completed the courses. I started at an older age than I should have, so I died on Narkina 5. I'm sorry.
God.
You and me
Oh.
both. Although I probably would never have jumped in. I probably would have just stayed there on the platform with Kino, trying to find another way out.
God,
Because that's
Andy
the because
Serkis's
that's another
acting
thing.
was so good. in
Right.
that
I think
moment.
that's another thing that like I think Andy Serkis did a really great job, or the directors, because I saw some of Andy Serkis's press tour as well, or his YouTube, whatever, the interviews that he was doing, and he said that they tried that scene in like many ways, and he tried playing it in a few different ways, and the one that they landed on I think was very poignant because I think to someone who knows how to swim or is not afraid of the water, I feel like knowing that they're probably going to die if they stand Narkina 5, knowing that this is probably Kino's only hope, it would probably be to jump in the water. Maybe maybe other inmates would help him out, or to just get in there. If he could just float, if he could just at least get off of this prison, planet, if he could just do that, then that would be better than staying. But as someone who's scared of the water, but probably could, if I were drugged or something, float and let someone drag me, like standing on the edge of something to jump into something that for sure that you can't do, that for sure will be horrifying, it would be extremely hard to jump. And I think it's really realistic that he stayed, even though like it probably hurt him so much that he had to stay. But to be held back by something that you wish that you didn't have to be held back by, and oh my God.
We're getting a couple moments like that, by the way, and
It's so
like,
painful.
and this is unique to like what you said, which is like he actually can't swim. But there's a couple moments in the show in which they show the heroes having pause before they go and do something big, and they're not just these fearless plot driving machines where they often are in fantasy, where it's like the heroes just step up and do what needs to be done, and they don't question it. We get what's her name,
With Val.
Val, right?
Yeah.
Val, where she's scared to say go on the mission back in Aldani. All these things are realistic,
Totally.
Before you go and do something big, dude. Can think about like how some of us might feel when we have like a big performance and we're like backstage and we're like about to like walk out, right? Sometimes I'm just like, okay, all right, gotta go do this, right?
For sure.
Like I remember some of those big kind of like really focus requiring performances. Yeah, scary things are scary things, and human beings are are not immune to that. So
Yeah.
that's
It's really
cool.
nice to see that.
Hmm.
So back to like
Seeing.
the music. Oh, the music. The music is very interesting at that part. I feel like it's
Hmm.
okay. So let me go back to Kino is giving that speech over the intercom and telling everyone to help each other, right? And telling everyone, first of all, there's one way out, which in the moment, I actually didn't know what he meant. I was like, what's the way out? What's the way out? But I kind of took it for granted that, well, the inmates must know what the one way is.
Yeah.
And he's saying you have to help each other. If you see someone who's confused, someone who is lost, you get them moving and you keep them moving until we put this place behind us. And he says we, so it feels like, I'm not sure the point at which Kino realized that he wasn't going to be with them. I feel like it was just on the platform. Um, there are 5,000
I
of
don't
us.
know. I don't think so.
Okay,
I think he was well aware, and I think that all of his hesitation
hesitation.
along the way had a lot to do with that.
Yeah,
And I
Oh.
think in the back of his mind he was thinking the only way out of here. That one way out thing is probably the reason why he said that. That was his original phrase that he decided to bring out there. I think the reason why he said that is because he's almost like reassuring him. It's almost like he's telling himself, "God damn it, there's one way out of here, and it's the one way that you can't do." Like
yeah.
like it's yeah. So I really think he had it in the back of his mind. The only way I'm getting out of here is swimming, which means I'm not getting out of here. And so he had to make that move at the moment when he was announcing, and Andor is like, "Is that the best you got?" Where he had to really just go all in and do everything that he could to motivate everybody, and it's also kind of pepping himself up for a second, where it's like okay, I guess I got to go ahead and do this because I'm gonna get to the end and look my fear in the face here.
I think
Yeah,
on
that
my
really
second.
goes.
Go ahead, Christina.
That really goes back to the theme of sacrifice that Luthen then was talking about at the end, where he's fighting for a sunrise that he will never see. It never occurred to me that he knew. I just assumed that the one way out was escaping in general.
Hmm.
But you saw much more depth in that, which is, yeah, which makes so much sense. And and it's really a sacrifice to convince everyone that they are gonna escape that way. No, if he knew that it was water or stay here at the end, I think that's really a huge sacrifice. And I
Right.
think that I love seeing the vulnerability in his face and his body language in those moments before he makes the speech. I mean, it was the first time we really saw him. I mean, he was almost like it's like he aged 10 years for a
Yeah.
second in terms of the worry on his face and everything. And Xanthe, you were just talking about the music there. As he's building up, like at the beginning of that, it's just silence plus the whirring of the machines.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like
Hmm.
little tech sounds,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just I thought that was a really I mean, that was a really long moment of him just kind of looking at the machinery and the machinery kind of making its kind of inconclusive sounds and then I don't know, it was kind of like I don't want to say chaos, but sort of like a stagnation, a sense of directionlessness, and then Cassian helps him find some sense of purpose in that. Uh, yeah, and how do you feel like the sound progressed from there? The soundtrack, because we were.
I think it was very not misleading, but I think we were hearing one thing and seeing another, which well, it was like two things happening at once because the soundtrack started picking up in a very sort of typical sort of inspirational way. I liked it for the record. I don't think that was a bad thing. I think it was saved for that moment because we hadn't heard that yet in the episode, so it was meaningful that it happened there, and it kind of gave the scene, gave the scenes, I guess, the different shots, momentum. You know, it was kind of that I don't know. It was like it sounded like trailer music almost. It was like really just like montagey, just we're seeing shots of like, running and everything. Like they're it was kind of getting inspirational, right? And crescendoing and like, not like fine details and like changing tempo here and there. It wasn't meant to be like an action set piece. It wasn't meant to be like asteroid field. It was meant to be like set it and it goes. And I thought that was very interesting because it kind of painted an inspirational picture, which in one way it was true. But it's on my second watch, seeing how people would be getting trampled and left behind. Kino himself is saying help each other, but no one's helping him. How people are kind of pushing each other off of the thing. So it was like it was interesting. Like I feel like those experiences weren't represented in the music, but I feel like that's not. I feel like still the broad strokes of what happened was accurate with the music. It's just there's always another layer, and visually, that layer was present. It took a couple watches though, for me to see like, oh, this actually isn't like as inspirational, rosy. We're all getting out like, as it sounds like it is. And so I felt like Kino not being helped there at the end, with that music kind of ending on a like happy note was so weird.
I loved that too. I thought of it as like you said, inspirational. I thought it was like it had this like triumphant feel. It's like we got out, kind of a thing.
And Cassian's
but
line.
We're also but we're like experiencing this heartbreak over Kino at the same time, and it really brought me back to Nemec's death. It was Nemec, right?
Mm-hmm.
The tech boy from
Yeah.
Aldani. Nemec's death, because the music did something very similar, and I remember mentioning it, is that it's still geared up to an exciting conclusion for the ship reaching past and breaking the atmosphere kind of a thing, where 3 seconds ago we just witnessed the horrific, crushing, literally death of this great character that we kind of built up and came to like really care for. So Nicholas Rattel and team are just like really like manipulating us emotionally in such a great way that like gravitates towards the severity of these scenes and realism. Again, kind of going back to the realism of like it doesn't all work out completely. They don't just all get out.
Yeah.
But like making us feel the excitement through the music of getting out, of succeeding. Like this was a success overall.
Right. The music is directing us to not dwell too much on this character that we love and that we, it's the music is calling on us to see the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Which could have been played in a different way, if everyone succeeded, but like our faves died or whatever. It could have been played for tragedy there.
You could have easily had like very sad strings playing and like the very slow adagio for strings kind of style thing going there. But no, we got triumph. It was success, and it's kind of this theme is just like all throughout aesthetic themes all throughout Andor. Christina, you were mentioning Luthen and his sacrifice. And it's like, yeah, we know that this will work out in a way, but like not all of it's going to work out, and it's going to be pretty bad. And that music there too, it was different. Instead of triumphant and inspiring, the Luthen music was kind of dark, kind of sinister. And when he screamed everything, we get this boom, boom, kind of the deep bass drum hits with max reverb kind of a thing.
So much reverb and very cold sounding.
So much reverb. I did appreciate, sorry, I know we just jumped scenes. I did appreciate the sound design in that whole sequence with Lonnie going through the tunnels. We had the elevator. He put a dirty earpiece right into his ear. I was like, how long has that been sitting there if it's been a year? He didn't even wipe it off. He just stuck it in his ear. And then I know. And then the elevator going down, we get the conversation, and then the sound design Okay, hyper nerd here. The fact that Luthen's voice sounded different than Lonnie's voice because Lonnie was still in the elevator and surrounded by metal. You could hear the difference in the sound design there. Between Luthen's voice was a little bit more in the hall. It just shows that how much detail that every team on this show is really taking. And I think it's just fun for us to point these things, how well this was done, especially because we had that great conversation about Darth Maul and Kira and their sound design of voices and direction and things like that. So it's just really great to like hear these like tiny little nerdy details that only us four pick up on and gush about. Yes, all of that connected.
It was an incredible scene. I went back immediately and rewatched it twice.
The Luthen scene?
And I'm so visually motivated as well, and I felt like Luthen had a bit of a Sith vibe.
And his
I
robes
thought that
too.
was pretty.
I saw some comments on the internet that were saying like, when they opened the door and they saw Luthen in the hallway, like I expected him to like draw a lightsaber, right? and I think so many Star Wars fans, myself included, are just every week we're like, it's like we're getting like reminded like it's not that type of Star Wars show. You know what I mean? Like there's like, I don't know if there's gonna be a moment that's like that in this show where it's like the exciting part is just the sheer nerdery. It's like the nerdery things are the things that are in the background, and the things that are exciting are actually just the storytelling of the show. But it's like, in Mandalorians, like some of the things that are exciting are like, oh my God, Luke Skywalker, like that's what tends to be exciting in that show. But anyway, so yeah, Sith vibes for sure, Christina.
Well, and he says in his speech,
Yeah, keep going.
Oh, in his speech too, he like, first of all, it was very Shakespearean, right? Like it was like the whole thing looked like a Shakespearean tragedy or something. The way it was shot and their outfits even. But his speech, which, it had all this poetic language in it. There's this line that he says, that really made it, like, it sealed the deal for me, that it's like he's doomed, like he knows that he's doomed to this kind of existence, where he says, okay, I've made my mind a sunless place. He says, I want to, what is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. So, that all the bad, that is, all the horrible tools used by his enemy, he's going to fight fire with fire, and that will take a toll on his soul. Like, I think that is like the most damning line, is being condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. Like, also that reminds me of Audre Lorde, and I'm reading from Audre Lorde's speech, her very famous speech. For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. And yeah.
Can we break down what Luthen is specifically referring to in this speech?
Sure.
I mean, it's almost a question. Then I have some thoughts. I'm very curious. Like, what tools of the Empire are Luthen utilizing, to fight them? Like, what is he talking about?
Perhaps the stolen equipment on super surface level, I guess. The stolen equipment that he's been kind of buying and peddling and stuff like that. But I imagine it was tools of the Empire, things like not only their own officers, which was a kind of a cool reveal with Lonnie,
right?
Showing the people that are on the inside and Gorn that work for them and don't agree anymore. But tools of the Empire, maybe such as fear, killing, threats, and stuff. I mean,
ruthlessness.
Without threatening Lonnie, he threatened Lonnie.
Right.
He's
like, no, you're gonna stay with me.
Yeah, I know you have a daughter, and without saying that, or like,
somewhat
scheming,
interesting
stealing.
that somewhat interesting that this particular episode that has this theme of like one way out of people trying to get through one situation ends with two characters that are resigned to essentially have no way out of their scenario. Both Luthen and Lonnie, and they both have L's. Interesting.
Yeah.
But
Another tool is extreme surveillance, because for Luthen to have kept such close track of Lonnie's life, that implies that he has a really intense surveillance network.
Yep.
And also control, because he has that little remote control that just like closes the door and sends the elevator down.
That's impressive.
And like the ride up, he's like, "Do you just want to scare me with that horrifying ride up?
Right.
Like with the elevator, I know you control."
I do like that in Star Wars. Oftentimes, to avoid like things that wouldn't be as like that would slow the scene down. Sometimes they just insert a technology that you didn't know existed in order to do that. And another example of that is Maz Kanata showing you a picture of a red plum bloom in the middle of a hologram that's in the middle of a fight that she's doing.
You'll never forget.
You're like,
yeah.
It's just so ridiculous. You're like, okay, how do we show the audience what we're looking for? Let's just she just presses a button and it appears over her hologram, right? Same thing with this elevator button. It's like, how do we make this effective that Luthen can just stop the conversation and it's not this awkward moment where Lonnie then has to go, all right, well, I'll see you later, and then presses a button himself.
Yeah, Luthen's like,
you know?
I'm just done with this talk. I need that.
Yeah, he's like, they're like, Luthen just has a button that goes, nope, we're done. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
You're going back
That's
up.
just like, that's the Star Wars version of how to like end a scene, right? Like how to it's like, how do we get this person off stage? Huh. I enjoyed that too. Such a Shakespeare. I mean, it's such a Shakespearean. What do they call that when
Monologue?
Yeah, it is. Is that just the word monologue? When
Monologue, yeah.
an actor, but also like kind of not breaks fourth wall, but like turns to the audience almost. This was almost like a Luthen looking to the audience and saying like, "This is how." Is that what that is? A soliloquy? But yeah, it was really like he was speaking it to Lonnie, but he was almost like speaking it to the audience, right? And it's almost like these words. It's almost like he writes poetry to himself. You know what I mean? It's almost like Luthen is so broody and he's got no real friends that he sits alone in his little spot in Coruscant and writes this emo poetry about how bad his life is. Because he was just ready.
Space.
He was just, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. He's like, I turned my mind into a sunless place. You're like, bro, you just have that in the chamber waiting to say, this is the way you just talk. Okay, all right, sure. Like you didn't have that. Like that's not on your like 50th page of your notebook at home, you know. But it was beautiful, and he delivered it wonderfully. And like Justin mentioned, that little like everything. And then that big sound design moment that really like, because he's like pretty calm that whole time, not calm, but just kind of like building the tension, you know. And then he like explodes, and so does the sound design. I loved that moment. Chills.
I think Lonnie looks like a monk in this shot.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
What was interesting too is that as Lonnie's the whole score in this sequence is interesting. He starts by, is it an underground club kind of thing? We get this like very electronic metallic percussion. It's like they took metal percussion instruments and then just like modulated them with electronics, kind of a thing. That's kind of what I felt like. It's kind of like rhythmic, but I couldn't quite tell if it was diegetic music or not. It kind of faded away as he got farther down the hall, but it still was like kind of score level in the mixing for me.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. And then it got very broody. But what was interesting is when he's in the elevator talking to Luthen, it almost turned into like horror music. Did anybody else feel that or notice that? Especially coming out of October, which I'm still mourning. Like horror music. It had this like very like dissonant, pad texture strings that were like making you feel very uncomfortable and really giving Luthen like these Sith vibes in a way. He's like, wow, he's kind of a shitty person, you know. And then eventually we get this great speech from him where he flat out says, "I sacrifice kindness." But it was this very terrifying kind of feeling, and perfectly aided by the score and the clunky like elevator and the just the kind of gross, unkempt situation. Like, this is where the rebellion has to hide, not just in caves, but literally in the underbellies of Coruscant, in the shadiest places where no one would think of.
Yeah, it's and that was literally represented by or I guess reflected. You were talking about the texture of the strings. And instead of playing sort of true on the playing the bow truly on the string, they were using kind of techniques where you kind of end up creating like too much friction and like kind of a nasty snarl that comes out of the string that's more of a noise effect that surrounds the pitches. Yeah, kind of like a
it's like
vocal
vocal
fry,
fry almost.
but
Yeah,
for
French.
strings.
Where was
I
it?
used to
Where
know the
is
word
this
for
happening?
this.
Where was
Xanthe,
that?
can you demonstrate for us?
Yeah, I'm like,
I'll be right
where
back.
was
Hold
that?
on.
Do you have a
Let's all
timestamp?
talk about strings while Xanthe listens to us.
Schools us here.
It's my turn, James.
I think it's overpressure. It's that overpressure bow technique, right? Like
Do you
where
have a timestamp though, so I can hear it before demonstrating just what I think you're talking about? Because I can demonstrate something, but I want to make sure that what I'm hearing is I want to make sure that because there's like several techniques that could be that. Is it after the club thing? Not club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or yeah, I think so. Right? It's because it's like this metallic percussion, and then he's in the elevator.
Is it while he's in the elevator?
So it's somewhere around like 31 minutes or something like that.
Okay.
Like 31, 32.
Okay. Thank you. I'm
It's a
listening.
little
to that.
after 31. It's more like 31:46.
Okay. Okay, I'm listening. I don't hear.
is it not when Luthen's actually
I don't really hear
talking?
strings.
Is it when he's actually talking then?
I think it is, but I'm don't diligently have the file pulled up.
I hear a lot of big booms.
Yeah, I hear a lot of big booms. Is it after your daughter, healthy, beautiful? Is that meant to scare me? You've become a father. It's not fair. You knowing, watching me. Do you ever think how it might feel from my spine? I think about you constantly. The elevator's so squeaky and
It's like a
booming.
bum on strings there.
Really at 3150?
Yeah, but it's not like a extended technique. It's just a pad.
Interesting. Okay. I don't hear it yet. So, and I'm at 3309. But
It might just be the squeaks of the elevator.
I mean,
that-
it might
that you're
be.
referring, like the.
I mean, it is one of those things where like
Well, the elevator is just such a and this happens. I like when these moments happen where like the elevator is clearly. I mean, they didn't have again little things that they didn't that show what they want you to see and feel the way you want to feel, but they don't have to put that into the scene. Like the elevator is not working very well, right? And that is a detail that doesn't actually affect what is happening in the action, but gives you it gives you information that's necessary for the situation. Like this is not a commonly used elevator. That's what we know from this, right? Like the elevator is shaking all around, right? And like that tells us, okay, this is a secret elevator. It's nobody ever uses it, and that's why he can just hide his crusty, disgusting earbuds in the ceiling, right? And
Right.
and it also the fact that it's shifting around and making all these sounds is integrated into the sound design, and it's also integrated into the environment that's like it keeps you on edge. Like Lonnie is clearly scared of Luthen, is scared of getting caught, and plus the freaking thing is like shaking all around while he's doing this. It's not a smooth trip down there. He's also like seemingly afraid for his life going down that elevator because the elevator could just like tower of terror down, at any
That's
at
what
any
I was
moment.
thinking. I was like, this is a ride that is not going to go well.
Right. This is the Guardians of the Galaxy ride. Boo. Anyway, so that's how I feel about
Yeah,
that.
me too.
About,
Me too.
About
Yes.
that
Bad
revamp.
retheme. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, but then it's also like integrated into the sound design, right? It's like we have this like really tense conversation with Luthen. We're like realizing, oh, like Lonnie's been a spy this whole time. He's like working with Luthen, and then we have these boom, boom, and like it's the sound of the elevator not working. So it's kind of like this beautifully crafted scene where we get all of this little context and information and background, but it's also like part of the environment and part of everything else. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good stuff.
So it reminds me also of Willy Wonka's elevator, but you're just like, where is it even going? But also, there's so many floors in Coruscant that it's just ridiculous. Also, I felt like
Yeah,
it,
what?
it,
Are they underground? Are they like actually under the ground, or is that just like level
Yeah, what is the
3
core-
and
what
one
is
of
the
their,
core
like,
of-
big...
Of Coruscant, right? I like George
they're,
Lucas
like-
doesn't think far enough for this type of thing. He's just like city, planet.
not
Whole
true.
planet
He
city.
he was going to do a series about the underbellies of Coruscant.
I know, but like I'm talking about like the
yeah.
actual science of like
Yeah.
what the planet is. George
Yeah.
Lucas just like whole planet's a city, whole thing. No, and you're like okay, but like on what ground is the city? Like, nope, city, planet.
This one's all water.
Yeah, it's like all water.
And always
This
raining.
one's all sand, all snow.
This...
Well, I think it actually is. Okay, most of the underworld rested more than a kilometer below this urban surface and city platforms. But I guess that doesn't
So
still tell
dumb.
you where the terrain like naturally sits. It just tells you like what the usable part of the city is. And
Right.
I have to say, like, I don't know, Christina, if you think this as well, but like the way that this was represented going down to the under levels of Coruscant is actually pretty accurate to what I was imagining in Thrawn, the first novel, when Arinda Price is going down to
Yeah,
the lower
when
levels.
her
where it's
elevator
so scary and her
suddenly just like descends way farther than it's supposed
Yep.
to, and she gets stuck
on a way lower
on
level,
a dark,
and it's not
terrifying level with like thugs with chains trying to kill her.
safe. Yeah, yeah.
I need a
Yeah.
Thrawn button. I need a sound that anytime when Thrawn is mentioned for the first time in each stream that just like
Thrawn's
it's like
not
the
even in
DJ
this.
horn.
Thrawn blue socks.
I will
Thrawn.
say though, however, Thrawn is
It's
not.
the
Thrawn
Thrawn
himself,
alarm.
Thrawn himself is not involved in this scene.
I'm just
maybe
saying.
you could you, James? Maybe you could, or someone could record him saying perhaps,
Perhaps.
and
I could,
that
and then I
could
could
be
play
the
it
Thrawn
back.
alarm.
That's a good idea. Another thing is like if anyone's read A New Dawn, is that what it's called? A New Dawn? It's the one with Hera's in it. Hera's parents are in it. Oh yeah, Hera's parents meet in it. Basically, it depicts the underbelly of Coruscant, like very low levels where like stormtroopers and like Imperial officers will go down there to like solicit sex and stuff, and it doesn't go. It's very seedy down there, and let's just say it's like a good place if you want to incriminate Imperials. Anyway, lower levels of Coruscant. Very interesting to see here, and the way that it sounds, I felt was very evocative. Jonah, can't wait to watch the whole stream today. I'll catch what I can. Cool. Okay, so yeah,
figure it out for
I
next
heard.
time.
I think I heard a grumbly string there while Luthen was talking, and I don't know if that's what you were referring to. But it was a very low pitched, right? Like played on like a double bass, right? Is that what you're
Yeah, it was
talking
probably double bass, very slow. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like
I have a feeling maybe I was thinking of somewhere else for some of those techniques, but
Okay,
yes,
okay.
you're right. It is a low
There's a moment, Christina.
slow grab.
at the beginning, maybe this is because this is I wrote this part down too. When Kino and Cassian in the very beginning, they get
Yes.
back to the bunks, like the bunks, and then they're like, "What's going on? Who did this?" Blah 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 blah, and the music like builds to this like cacophony of just like voices and sounds, and then uh, uh, Kino just screams, "No one is getting out." I loved that moment because the score just drops, and we get these low bass. I thought they were upright bass, like giant cello, kind of like, whoom. And that's it. And you just get like two or three of them as he's like explaining to everybody that we're like, no, we're this, that no one, they're obviously lying to us, kind of a thing. And that was the mistake. They were always doing the recycling. That's what it meant to me when they said they made a mistake last week. That it wasn't that they made the mistake. It wasn't that they made the mistake of sending them, like, of doing the recycling of their prisoners. It was that they sent them to the same prison
Yeah.
instead.
Right. I see. Yeah, and they confirmed what we were curious about last week for sure.
It's getting out.
I really
Base.
like how much real estate you gave to Davos teal Playboy suit.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to zoom in on the "no one is getting out" part, where I
Oh my
I
gosh,
wrote
I just
bass
noticed that.
and
That's
also
priceless.
that low bass thing.
Yeah, I like how you're
Yeah.
like better use half my page to draw this thing.
Complex. Did you feel like complex threading pattern or something?
It's a kind of
Okay,
it's
so
an
what I was going to
amazing
say
drawing.
was the thing that we hear during Luthen's speech is that same note as we hear when Kino is like, "No one is getting out." And it's that very low. It's like, boo, except on a double bass, so it's like significantly lower, and it's the grumble is just naturally present when you are going to bow a note that low, because the onset of the note is
Yeah.
it just takes a lot to make that string vibrate. So it's always going to be kind of
Yeah, the
grumbly.
string is.
And
love it.
so, yeah, it was the same, pretty much the same, same note as there, which, could have just been reused or whatever, but it's
Yeah.
same vibe at least. Like, yeah, this.
Sorry. Continue. Sorry.
Oh, no,
I
I
just
think-
had a huge
You had a huge revelation?
revelation.
Okay,
I did, but it's not at all relevant to what you were just saying at all. So I'm like,
that's okay.
Alright,
I
sorry.
think that was the end of that thought.
okay, y'all. So you've been talking about how there's so many characters in this show that have double letters, right?
Yes.
Mm.
Okay. So you've got
Oh,
that
no.
list somewhere, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to see it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The green glass door.
Yeah,
It's
can
the
you show
green
us the
glass door
list?
list. Okay. I updated it last night. Because these are very important things to do. Yes. Okay, here we go.
Okay. Can you tell me like what main characters in the show aren't on that list?
Kino.
Uh-huh.
Luthen.
Gorn.
Well, what's Luthen's last name?
Rael. Rael.
Ooh, okay. Then maybe. Okay, keep going. Yeah. Who else?
What is Clea's last name?
Xanthe? There's also Xanthe
Yeah. Cinta.
on this list.
Oh, Clea's last name is Markey. Okay. Yeah, Cinta. Vel, as far as I know. Mon Mothma.
Okay.
Cyril.
All right. So.
What was,
Cyril.
Well, Cyril. No,
oh,
Cyril's
no,
got a double.
No,
Two Rs,
Cyril.
right?
No.
Cyril
No,
Karn?
just one.
No. Oh, okay. So here's my hypothesis.
Okay.
So far, Gorn,
Take home as
Nemec,
well.
and Kino have perished in this show so far, and none of them have double letters. Okay. So I think that we can follow this prediction Luthen's gonna die. Clay is gonna die. Anyone that doesn't have double letters is dead in this show, and they better watch out. And I really think that by the end of this show, Mon Mothma will die, only to be resurrected as a clone for Return of the Jedi. Okay.
Okay, so basically, this
Nice.
theory does not pan out.
All right, but I did
Unless
want to
that
throw that out
happens.
there that Kino,
Yeah.
a very like you've been bringing up this like double letter thing, and like we've got like a couple main characters that are new to the show that don't fall into this naming convention, which is kind of interesting.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
And like
Totally.
Kino, and I was thinking to myself like, ooh, Kino's like a pretty main character, and they didn't include him in this like
The
thing
double letter.
that they're doing, in the double letter thing, which is weird. And I'm wondering, okay, that could be something funny and cute, like I just brought up.
What about Anton
which is
Krieger?
like,
So he's gonna
How do you
he'll
spell Krieger?
survive.
Kreegyr.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Okay.
it'll be fine.
At least in this show.
Glad to hear
In
it.
this show, he'll be fine.
Cool.
Saw
Well,
Gerrera, he'll be
so
fine.
Skeen
It'll be-
did
so-
die, but Cassian.
Skeen died. And he's
But
off-
maybe
La,
when
la, la,
Cassian
la,
kills
la,
people,
la,
it's
la,
like
la,
that.
Yeah, well,
okay,
he deserved
James.
it.
All right, James. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing.
no, again, so
I've
I think
also
I know that my point being is like, okay, so it could be something funny, like you know, there's like a funny like, oh, it means you're gonna die, right? But like, I'm just also wanted to bring up like, okay, well, we've got a couple of main characters in this show that are like getting a lot of spotlight that aren't falling under this like clearly purposeful naming convention that they like, right? We've kind of agreed that they kind of did this on purpose, like probably, right?
I'm still
Like,
not sure
kinda
that it's on
ridiculous that-
purpose.
I know
I'll
we're
take
not
that.
sure,
I'll
but
take that
like,
Officially
conspiracy theory.
subscribe.
I'll take that outlandish claim, James. I love it.
right? Like, did we talked about that? Like, could be two things. Like, they could have just been like, oh, that's like a funny thing that we can do for this show,
Yeah.
or like a kind of interesting through line, or it could be like that's like a shortcut to Star Warsy names, right? Is like just put 2 letters in it, right? That could be a possibility as well. But like I said, we have these main characters that like don't fall into your Green Glass Door list, and I'm wondering if that makes them stand out a little bit more. Does that make their characters seem more, like pinnacle to the show, or does that have zero effect at all? Well, to me, it kind of does. Especially
me
when I look
too.
at that list, I'm like, whoa, Kino's not there, Gorn's not there, Nemec's not there, Luthen's not there. You know, we have a couple of these big players that have played big parts in these arcs so far that haven't been there. So interesting.
If we break it down to the construction of their names, though, with like the what's it called, phonemes or whatever, I'm not sure. I can't remember. I can never remember what they're called though. The ones that don't have double letters though, they do have something in common, like Kino, Nemec. You know, it's sort of like they have like
2 syllables.
but the
Luthen.
names that have names that have Luthen. It's not that it's
Yeah.
2 syllables.
Ma
It's like
on Mothma.
yeah,
Right.
it's like
Ma on.
it's like I think it's like names with like Marva has 2 A's. It's not as like Obi-Wan is like very, the short little fragments
Yeah.
of that name. But the ones with kind of complex or longish vowels, they go ahead and give them 2. I hope Marva lives though, so double letter there. Tim died, 2 M's. But okay, that's fine.
Didn't they kind of?
Okay,
like?
it's
Yeah.
more a
I know, okay.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Didn't they kind of imply that Marva's not taking her medicine
Yeah.
or something like that? She's not eating.
Marva's not looking good right now.
No, she's not doing well at all.
Marva is not looking
Which
good.
I
Oh,
have
and then
to
actually
say,
during that,
I want her to live
Oh.
pretty bad.
Yeah, me too.
you want her to live, yeah.
I do. Not that I care about her that much because I don't feel like I don't not care about her, but just, Marva, Bix, Ferrix, I feel like we haven't spent that much time there. The reason I kind of don't want her to die is because I feel like that would be, of all the plot choices, I feel like that's kind of a simple one. Like the old person is getting sick and is dying, but like has a knee injury and is not taking medicine. It feels different than Kino not being able to swim. It's fine if it still happens. Like, I said I'm
Yeah.
usually not interested in prison breakouts, but the way that the way that it's done, it's been really exciting to see. So maybe
Yeah,
maybe it'll be
and
fine.
then yeah, and then we could
Well,
have the.
I
I
mean,
mean, I
I
see
can
what you mean.
relate.
Is it?
You can relate?
I can. Yeah, I've got a family member that's not taking medicine that they should be taking right now, and it's really frustrating. So
Mm.
I resonate with that situation.
Okay.
Um, so
Yeah. Speaking about that part of that scene though, where we find out, did you all hear in the background? We got the return of the bells, the
Mm-hmm.
big the big hammer
yeah,
bell anvil
some
thing.
I feel like
Did
the
it?
intervals are different. Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say, was I crazy? Was I just not hearing things right? I felt like there were different notes. Like
yeah, it
this
was a
felt
half
like more
step this
like a
time.
da da da, like a melodic thing that fit
Yeah,
really well with what was going on. But they were definitely the same, like from a distance tone, kind of
yeah,
like
yeah, for
coloring them.
sure. They had like there was definitely like seemingly half step. You know, like I
Yeah, I
say
was like,
seemingly because
dee,
likely
dee, dee,
right.
dee.
Yeah,
And
it had this like
which
different interval thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
which reminded me even more of Indonesian gamelan
Hmm.
music, where the intervals can sometimes sound close. Now you wouldn't call them a half step because they're tuned very specifically in non-Western,
Right.
but they're closer. Some of the intervals are closer than that. So pretty it was pretty cool.
James, you could be a little louder.
Pretty
I'm
cool.
not sure if your mic could come closer.
I'm
Also,
just feeling a little
we're still
shy
not
today.
sure if James is talking off axis to his mic. Okay. You don't even. James doesn't even care.
Uh,
Uh,
I've got a little a moment that going. Sorry, Ziggy did something unacceptable. Um, uh, she's disgusting me right now. That's her whole vibe. um, um, but yes, so just a quick return to the Luthen's monologue and how wonderful it was. I wanted to really so the kind of the number one thing about that scene that struck me was the lighting choice of
totally.
having a really strong light on one side and then very clear shadow on other side of Luthen's face. And I felt like that was extremely purposeful, obviously, because if there's going to be a studio light on one side, that's a really big deal. Um, and you can really only see it in the shots that actually show Luthen himself, because that's the interesting thing, is that Luthen's lighting was different from Lonnie's lighting.
Hmm.
Lonnie's lighting was super washed out, kind of all the same, and Luthen's was like, I mean, there was almost a clear division line on his face. And to
Mm.
me, because we've been talking about how the director approached Star Wars, or like approached this show as a non Star not as a non Star Wars fan, but as somebody who's kind of analyzing what's up with Star Wars. And one of the main concepts in Star Wars is the concept of the dark side and the light side of the Force. And I think that at this moment we're talking about kind of the dark side of the rebellion. We're talking about Luthen making um, all of the he talks about looking down and realizing all of the dark, terrible things that he had to do to achieve something light. And one of the things that strikes me is that one of the that in Star Wars, specifically in the Empire part of the universe, the Force is perceived as, well, I guess by Jedi and Sith, people who know the Force, perceive it where there's a sort of corrupting thing that occurs when you use your enemy's weapons against them.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if you're a Jedi, the number one thing you have to not do is kill out of anger, revenge, retribution. You can't do that because if you do, some part of you, as it connects to the Force, rises and rises, and then you could go from being an Anakin Skywalker to being a Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that this moment with Luthen is really making me think about that because something corrupting occurs uh, when using the Empire's weapons against them. He's kind of saying that his mind is a sunless place. Um, I think that there's this analyzation of kind of, I mean, it's kind of a moral question. It's like, can you still be a good person if you're using, if the means to get to the end are morally questionable or motivated in a dangerous way. And yeah, I think that this is kind of a comment on the nature of the maybe not the force, but just the nature of the dark side, the light side. There's a very clear dark side and light side going on visually.
Mhm.
What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I think I couldn't have said it better. I mean, we see it in Tales of the Jedi too, with Dooku, kind of freaking his apprentice out a little bit, Oh, okay, okay,
I haven't seen
okay,
it yet.
okay. Oh, very sorry.
Come
Sorry,
on,
Justin.
Xanthe.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, Justin. Yeah, I took it for granted. I
That
thought
was
I was the last one.
reckless.
Okay, well, anyway, but we see it
No.
whenever a Jedi is going to turn to the dark side, like Dooku, Anakin,
Right. Oh yeah.
others.
Yeah, I think I can't imagine that the Jedi Sith slash imagery wasn't intentional in that scene.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely some type of indication of what we should at least be thinking about thematically here.
totally.
Luthen's in
Yeah.
a place of power, and we think we see these age old themes come into play, which is like the a path paved with good intentions. So yeah, so uh,
But it's
good
great we're
stuff.
still getting these kinds of themes with. I mean, this is, I think, it's one of the more, we keep kind of saying that this show is such a very different take on Star Wars, or a different angle, a different mood, different kind of. It's not Star Wars for a lot of people. Just saying what has been said a lot,
Yeah.
but what is very Star Wars about this show is this duality, is this light and dark, and people trying to navigate the path in between. I mean, no, we're not going to see, as much as we want to see Luthen with a lightsaber, just, for shits and giggles, or to see something like that. We're in a period of Star Wars where there are no Jedi. The only Jedi there are, if we want to,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
in the
got
sense
you.
of,
Yeah.
the Jedi as a group
Yeah.
do not exist
Yeah,
anymore.
Hmm.
The Scragglers out there are not, perhaps, they don't consider themselves that in many various ways. Even Darth Vader, who is around, is a Sith at this point. So it's I don't know. It's cool that we're still getting that theme in the show. That for a show that has no Force, the Force is very much alive everywhere, kind of a thing, and is very much influencing people.
Mm-hmm. I want to share this tweet from Pablo Hidalgo. Kind of shows some insight into the creation of this, in terms of how much Tony Gilroy knew, was basing things off of, worked with story group, etc. So he says, the joy of advising on Andor is working with a team that will take established lore and build on it in new and refreshing ways. Here's what you need to know about Mon Mothma and the ISB, they'll say, and they find inspiration and possibilities within that. And that was a quote retweet from the original thing, which was, the canon on Mon is not as extensive as you would think. She's from Chandrilla. She became a senator when she was 16. We know when she leaves the Senate. That's canonically on our calendar, but her family life was up for grabs, says Tony Gilroy. And look what Tony Gilroy created for her family life. That is such a rich.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Again, kind of what I said last week. Not to open up Pandora's box again, but he clearly likes this stuff. You know what I mean? He did a great job and a very respectful job. He wasn't he wasn't interested in steamrolling over anything or rolling his eyes at anything. It's he was able to paint within the lines,
Yeah.
to a certain extent of canon. in a really cool way. Was that Chandrillan like marriage custom already canon, or is that something
No,
from this show?
something from the
No,
show.
it's
Um,
new.
wow, it's
Cool.
a
So he
really
and
great addition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and again, this is kind of he has a very George Lucas type of approach in terms of the anthropology
Yeah.
of the different groups. Like that's if one thing that Lucas was like actually interested in doing details on is like that element um, of different groups of people and like what their culture is like. He's like really interested in culture, and I remember
Hmm.
seeing an interview with him about that, and everything started to click. I was like, oh, so that's why some of this stuff is the way it is because he's like really interested in exploring the cultures of the different planets and the different peoples that he creates. And this was kind of a continuation of that type of approach, which is like let's world build on these groups of people and integrate it into the story in a way that makes sense. Um, and and that was also a harrowing little scene there, right? Where she has
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, and kind of it's just so it's fascinating that like a place like Star Wars, like a galaxy like Star Wars, has these. You don't, you know, it's just so interesting to see like like a person like Mothma is like part of this group of people that are like marrying off their 13 and 14-year-olds, you know, and like within this futuristic society, you know, and it's fascinating.
This was probably
absolutely.
this is a continuation of last episode, and I'm thinking of Vel's line, like we're making something of our lives. Um, I also think it's interesting how this show is portraying people from different classes getting involved in the struggle because, um, well, sometimes when people are very privileged, rich, whatever, they
Mm-hmm.
come from extreme privilege, to feel like not complete shit sometimes based on what their values end up becoming. I feel like there's so much more in Val's line of like we're making something of our lives than like we're spoiled rich kids. We're finally like we're making something of our, I don't know. The way that it reads to me is very interesting, and also the type of thing where stepping out. I know that when like rich people get involved in like a cause, sometimes they're given even more attention because it's like, oh my gosh, like what a
Yes.
humanitarian, whatever. And I feel like there's hints of that, like not saying it's not coming from a genuine place, but there is this sort of like penance that certain people of privilege kind of feel like they always are having to make up for something or do something. And I think that was like such an interesting moment to see between those cousins because we had only seen Vel completely involved in the struggle before. Now to see her with Mon Mothma, and to just see more of Mon Mothma, interfacing with her other rich people is is really is really interesting.
I think another side of that that adds to the interest of those moments is the way that no matter at what level you enter life in, well, at least in Empire society and maybe in our society as well, um, it's very hard to change to a different level.
Yes.
uh, Even becoming a rebel, they'll still can go back and be exactly a spoiled rich girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mon Mothma is hope was saying that like she maybe didn't want her daughter to have an arranged marriage at all. And so I think that's interesting, just that kind of like no one is immune from the sort of track that one is born onto. Not that it's impossible to change tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Arinda Price is a great example of that. Um,
Yeah.
but well, a reasonable example of that. But yeah, I think it's very interesting, and I think that the music there was also really painful sounding
Mm.
when Mon Mothma is trying to decide. I mean, I there of course there were other kind of painful moments previously in Andor, but I really felt like it was particularly poignantly painful, um, the way that it was orchestrated and It was very smooth in a painful way. Like the timbres of the different instruments used melded together in a very cohesive way where you'd have like to me I was like, oh, I'll have to listen again to determine like precisely which instruments were playing which parts,
Mm-hmm.
because they all kind of were together, but they were together in making a very dissonant, close, painful uh, intervallic structure.
Mm. And there also wasn't any music in that scene
At the
really
beginning.
until that
Mhm.
revelation of what was actually being asked of her. You know,
Yeah.
there's just it's just dialogue, and all of a sudden the strings come in right when he starts to hint like, hey, this is actually what I'm asking for, right? So it's like
Yeah.
she's thinking she can just get what she needs until things get real for her. In that moment, she's like, oh, here's where the sacrifice comes in. That's where the music comes in. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the harmonies were very like tight there. Like, so if it was like it was like really
Hmm.
rubbing. Yeah, there were some notes rubbing against each other. Definitely some half steps, and then, maybe going into thirds and fourths. But then it's still very underscorey. Like while they're making this negotiate, not it's not a negotiation. She doesn't want to do it. Um, and then of
yeah.
course the Mon Mothma theme does
But
then.
they're all diatonic close intervals, by the
Yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah. That's the thing.
So it's
I wouldn't consider it dissonant. I would just say it's closed voice, like a pretty closed voicing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
I feel like
Diatonic
it.
for
but with
those meaning
meaning with suspensions
yeah,
still making it a little bit dissonant because of
yeah,
because of so many half steps.
yeah. And for if we often get asked to kind of explain some of these things when we say them on the stream, but so diatonic meaning that no notes like still notes within a set scale, a set minor scale or a major scale. Notes, not notes that are coming out of that, creating a dissonance, because dissonance meaning a sense of unease or lack of consonance, lack of sonorousness, and
Dissonance is
close.
a subjective term.
It is
Tension.
subjective for sure. Like
Tension.
for instance, I was really I was when we were talking about the bells on Ferrex earlier. Somebody might describe those intervals and those sounds as dissonant, but I wouldn't. Those are the cultural sounds of that town, like, and oftentimes when you're listening to music from non-Western cultures, sometimes it feels tempting to describe something as dissonant when it's completely within the context of somebody might listen to Balinese gamelan and say that's a kind of a dissonant sounding music when it's not, right? Or at least it wouldn't be described that way to the people making it.
Yeah, as long as you're saying like dissonant as like a negative, I guess, because I guess
Yeah.
for me, like dissonance is a
Dissonant-
descriptor and is not necessarily.
Yeah,
I'm
suggestive.
agreeing with you, James, but like in the sense like
But
I
I
would call
wouldn't-
gamelan dissonant, but I wouldn't mean that. What I'm saying is like I'm not saying like
But I don't think it functionally is dissonant. Like,
no,
it doesn't-
no. I
That's why
agree
I'm
with
saying
you. I agree with you
dissonance
there. But
is
just
like
like
a
in the sense
descriptor,
of-
just a
Yeah, in
Oh,
the sense of
similarly,
dissonance
like
being
similarly like
the rubbing,
like,
the beating. Yeah,
I guess so.
you know.
Yeah, similarly, like I don't know if you would describe like the whole steps and close intervals used in like Georgian choir. I don't know if you would describe that necessarily as dissonance within that context, considering that sound closeness of those notes is used in a way not to portray. I don't know. Yeah, dissonant has a lot of baggage, or not baggage, but
Yeah,
just
it's weird. It's like the
some-
word noise. I agree with
Right.
you. No,
Right.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to navigate that term too personally.
Yeah.
you know.
But it's a lot. Yeah. But anyway,
I think
regardless,
it's contextual because I think you
Yeah,
can just
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about dissonance in terms of just half steps rubbing together. If someone thinks in the moment that that's dissonant, whether or not it fits into the context of like a scale, like if you only hear the two half steps before hearing the full context of a chord anyway, you don't even know
Right.
what scale is supposed to be implied. You're making a judgment based on the first note, and you're thinking, oh, that's probably the tone, like the bass note of,
Right.
this thing. So I think,
Right.
it's different to be like, okay,
Yeah.
so this dissonant part, or like this part where there's tension to resolve somewhere, is,
Right.
is a little
Yeah.
bit different than like thinking the whole thing has, I don't know. I think
sure,
it's just,
for sure.
it's like a,
Like my friend,
like,
my
it's like
friend
the word
Anthony.
colorful. Like, it really depends on where you're coming from, what you're comparing
Yeah.
it to.
My friend Anthony from elementary school used to dip his Oreos in ketchup. Okay, so like, and you might like, everybody else here on this stream might just be like, that does not make any sense together. But to Anthony, that was the most consonant combination in the world to him. Like dipping those Oreos, those Oreos. Every time he ate an Oreo, he's just like, it needs a little bit more ketchup.
But you don't know that it was a consonant experience for him. It could have been a dissonant experience for him.
That's what he wanted.
But
He wanted the pain
the
of
dissonance.
ketchup and Oreo.
So that's the thing. So like Justin is, dissonance isn't a value judgment of like,
No,
it's
not
good
value.
or-
We're talking about dissonance. We're talking about whether tension is created or whether things go together in a way that complements each other, right?
But
Like,
you're saying to
like-
him
Yeah.
it was the most consonant thing in the world, which is not necessarily true. He might not like
it
the
could
taste
be.
of consonants. He might like the contrast.
Or to him, he's like, these just fit so well together.
Yeah.
There's no dichotomy going on here.
Yeah.
This is just ketchup and Oreos. What a combination. Anyway,
What a combination. I'm sorry, I did not mean to just like start something there. I just
No, you didn't.
nice.
I'm so sorry,
No,
James.
it's worth,
I'm with
no, it's
you
worth talking
100%
about
of the
dissonant.
way.
No, it's worth talking about. It's because we've already in this past 5 minutes we've had so many slightly different examples of using and interpreting that word. So it kind of made its
Yeah.
point.
we made a great point. We did a great job.
So anyway, Christina, I know what you mean there with it, specifically where it kind of starts on this and then goes. And I don't think that's dissonant. It doesn't sound dissonant. It does sound dissonant to me when I play it like this. In the grand scheme, I don't think it sounds like it doesn't fit, though. It doesn't sound like it's... Anyway, it's dissonant with a lowercase
Fascinating.
d.
All the different levels.
Anyways.
Dissonant
And
with a lowercase
I have a
d.
question for you guys about that moment in the soundtrack. So for me, so do we all four agree that that was a painful moment? Of course, some people might not have thought so. It may not have been painful, but I think we all kind of use that word painful to describe it. And I think
To
that
describe
something.
Davo insinuate, like wanting to introduce his son. Kind of
Yeah,
implying
and particularly Mon's like feelings about it, and like the look of terror and tragedy in her eyes. Like, am I about to
Yeah.
sacrifice my daughter for the rebellion? And I wonder, do you feel that pain in a specific part of your body? Because when I hear those intervals and feel that kind of pain, it's very specifically a sternum tension. That's exactly where it is for me. And I just wonder if you guys experience anything like that. Or if you'll have to think about it for the next episode and report.
Oh, how do you think about it?
That should be part of our pool party. Is you just have like a soundboard of different intervals, and we sit there and go, feeling this kind of in my shoulders here.
Well, the context matters a lot. So
Okay,
it's like,
I see. Like,
yeah,
what's
yeah. So
happening
this
in that
is
moment?
in the context
I
of
see.
knowing that this is a deep thing with Mon Mothma. And I mean, I've studied like kind of like all the sort of spiritual systems that I can think of, that especially as they relate to the body. And there is the concept and just like, so the chakras. So
Yeah.
specifically, I have noticed that when I watch or experience any kind of pain that is that kind of like, oh wow, like something that I love, I may have to sacrifice. Or identifying Mon Mothma, someone that she loves, she may choose to sacrifice, and she's trying to make that decision. That's considered kind of something that you would experience in like below your neck but above your belly button. Like that's like where that pain is
It's
theoretically
the heart.
would
It's
fall.
the
And I
heart
just find
chakra
that like
there,
the heart
Mhm.
or the
chakra, the
solar
green
plexus.
one, yes, the
Yeah.
solar plexus and the green heart, the yellow and the green ones.
Mm.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting. And for me that like I'm very aware of that because I've been thinking about that sort of thing. But I was just wondering if y'all have any similar experiences.
Interesting.
I think for me, it makes me feel floaty, like a floaty sensation, because like I feel sort of like my spirit leaving my body or something. Like I feel like it's almost like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. It's like a little dissociation almost.
Mm.
And I think the music as well, where it's kind of, there's all that, reverb or, simulated reverb where you're hearing really long tails of notes when other notes are
Mhm.
changing. And it's kind of like a wash, it's a whole wash of stuff. It almost feels like time is going by so slowly now. I'm like moved from, being in it to like, no, watching it. She didn't think this
Yeah.
is how the Davo thing would go. And now she's not even really thinking right now. She's just like, you can show him out. Like she doesn't even like try to discuss it further. She's just like, Tay will show you out. And that's, I don't know. I feel like she checks out at that moment. Like I feel like she could have been like, she could have fought him. She could have said, she's lost track of her goal at that point, which is like she really seems to need him to do this thing. And here she's like kind of cutting off this possibility immediately. She's not even trying to get a different option at all. She's just like, okay, bye. I can't do this conversation anymore. She doesn't even want to. Yeah. So I feel like she's pretty checked out. I'm pretty checked out on her behalf as well.
Hmm.
For sure. How do we feel about what the audience, like this kind of harkens back to our conversation about what the rebels do on Aldani, like the lines in the sand that might like make the audience feel one way about the protagonist or not. Do you think that if Mon Mothma sold out her daughter to married off her daughter to help the rebellion, do you think that would affect how the audience views her as a potentially heroine in this story? Or do you think that would be a line that it would be wise for them not to let her cross? Like Mon Mothma seems to me like they can't let her go like Luthen style, right? Like they can't let that character. They need her by the time of Return of the Jedi. She's like the hero, right? Like she's like she got her her hands dirty and the thing she had to do, but like she didn't do something that's like morally repulsive, right? Like to it like are so morally repulsive that it would like tarnish her image within the the
Mhm.
fandom and also within the story, right? Isn't that would everybody agree with that? Like you kind of when you're telling these stories, Mon Mothma, you can't turn I don't know, you can't really turn her into like a anti-hero in some ways, right?
By
What do you
you
think,
Yeah,
can't,
Justin?
I'm,
do you mean like you think that they won't do that?
Yeah, I don't think they won't. Yeah, I think that they
Okay.
won't, and they clearly won't because like she immediately turns that idea down. But they could have written the show, and I guess it remains to be seen what the purpose of rejecting this offer will serve towards the plot. It'll probably paint her into a situation in which she's basically screwed, and she has to like basically burn the house down with everything else, right? Um,
yeah,
I think
I
that's
see.
basically the situation where they're bringing her. Anyway, yeah, Justin. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, I think I think that her refusing this is going to have a huge drawback, and I feel like they kind of mentioned in that tweet, Xanthe, that you had showed. We know that she, like, when she left the Senate, but her family was up for grabs. Her family story was up for grabs. So I'm curious if this decision is going to separate her from her family in a way. Like, perhaps, what's his name? Dalvo
Skull
is going to just
Davo, yeah.
show up. Just show up with his son. And it's like, what are you going to do to stop me? I know things about you.
Totally. Her
And even
husband
if
could be
she
thrilled. Oh,
exactly,
sorry,
and
sorry. Yeah.
even oh no, yeah, but like if she refuses and makes a scene, that could be breaking tradition. She's gonna yell at her husband. She's gonna find out, all these other things, and that could separate the family. or her from her family, or she could be like, no, we're gonna do this. We have to. I have no choice, and that will destroy the relationship with her daughter even more than it already has been. I'm curious if this is why she'll leave the Senate. Maybe she will leave in some kind of disgrace, or just I'm not doing this anymore, kind of a thing.
I don't know if what she does in her home life would be like like I don't think this marriage thing would be a big scandal to the rest of the galaxy. Like on
Not the galaxy,
okay.
but on a small political level within this in the Senate.
I guess like with regard to Chandrilla, since she is representing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a representative,
I mean, it's just it's their custom.
Like yeah.
Right.
Well, it seems like it's not. It's their custom. I don't think it's their custom. Period on Chandrilla. I think it's a custom amongst the upper class.
Huh.
Because all the references he was making in his speech, that was like, we are different. All the things foisted upon us, of means, like it. I didn't get the sense that he was even representing Chandrilla. Period. It was like we rich people is what their whole conversation was about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Royal families do that, right? Like
yeah.
Well, yeah. This is very Game of Thrones. This is very...
it's getting that feeling.
Yeah, and they make fun of Vel for being so old, having not been married already. So she's actually the social outcast as the one who didn't accept an arranged marriage.
Yeah, because she's from the rich family.
And she's romantically interested in, a woman, right? I'm wondering if that is something outside what would be the norm or is acceptable in Chandrilan culture.
Yeah.
Considering, there seems to be a patriarchal type, emphasis, or maybe not patriarchal, but maybe just like specifically,
is Xanthe Chandrilan, or is she from somewhere else?
No.
Well, I mean, that could be part of it too. That she's, you're not even marrying or like involved with the Chandler, and like, what are you doing, kind of a thing.
I really think it's rich people want to preserve their rich legacy and put power with power. I feel like that's
right.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting. We were talking about the class dynamics. So it's interesting that her partner basically is stuck stationed on Ferrix, and Val gets to travel, back to fancy Coruscant and do that, and Xanthe is kind of stuck in the trenches right now still. When we talk about the differences in class dynamic, for sure.
Mon Mothma is shaking with anger at that point. They did such a good job by building up her family life and how little she gets along with her husband. Yeah, they do it very efficiently. I do want to put up this comment because we never got to it. Sorry if this was covered, but I noticed that when they got in the control room, I'm assuming on Narkina 5, I heard the same noise you hear when Poe realizes Holdo is fueling the transports in The Last Jedi. I will have to go back.
That's cool.
I'll have to go back and see that one too.
And check on that. But that's interesting. Okay.
That is interesting.
What is the noise, Gary 2-4 fan?
Yeah, can you describe that sound a little bit?
Can you describe that?
Yeah, like, or where you think it's coming from?
Yeah. What I did love about that control room is that I had my little offhand prediction true that there was a man behind the curtain, and it was a voice changer, and it was just, it was just a very, like, pointedly not threatening looking person giving these commands throughout the thing.
How funny is that Andy Serkis basically did that with the Snoke situation,
right?
Like,
yeah,
and now he's kind of doing it again a little bit here. He's like talking into the microphone, kind of like he did.
Exactly, and I thought it was funny that his voice got. I loved that his voice got changed as well, and it wasn't just like. Can you just imagine after hearing that voice for like years on program, the same voice comes in and says, "Yeah, we're getting out, guys." It's like, hold on a second. Yeah. What's going on here? Which is just proof that, for everyone, like something's going on. And what I liked about, I also, just fun note I wrote, I like how that's the control room, and to shut down the entire power for the entire thing and all the floors takes 3 switches right next to each other. And it's like, good thing I didn't do that by accident. It takes months. It takes months to get back online. Shit, don't throw this 3 switches next to each other. You'd think there'd be like a double key across the room kind of thing. It needs to scan your face, which is like an Empire thing apparently. And
well, the Empire, their efficiency, is
I know,
also
I
their
love how,
downfall.
I love the little like almost like Princess Bride callback of like it's like, show us the things, like, no, boom, oh, I'll show you, which like to me was like Princess Bride, if you've seen that movie, where they're like, give us the key to this store. I don't have any keys. Okay, Terra's RM. Oh, these keys. Yes,
Okay.
these keys. I forgot. It's like, no, I'll do it. Don't worry, don't shoot. Kind of a thing. And how weak they were portrayed, like right there. And with the guards cowering behind the door, trying to survive because they know that they just unleashed 5,000 very well worked and like fit prisoners that they have no control over now. I thought that was great. And with that, I had another note about the whole music for the prison break was great too. It wasn't as like heisty. I like that they didn't just do the. I mean, there was still the dun 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 dun.
You mean before the inspiration
kinda,
part?
Yeah, before the inspirational part, but like the part where they're like attack. It wasn't like this like. I don't know. I felt like they built up those moments really well. The scene where they like fried everybody and then the circuits broke and things like. They had the realization of like that silence for a moment, and it's almost like reverse. Kind of a thing with the score. It's like attack, and everyone just starts, going for it. But what I loved the most was their walk to their last shift as prisoners. So when they all decide the morning of kind of a thing, we get this great like synth like dun 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 dun, which reminds me of a little bit of that John Williams dun 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 dun
Totally.
kind of a thing. So we get, and then there's a moment where they're working. They're like they're working. They're not pretending to work. Like they're doing the thing, and we get the combination of the Narkina 5 music theme and the Andor theme. The Narkino 5 is like dun 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 ba-da, dun, ba-da. I'm missing all the notes, but that's like the theme. Underneath that, with the Andor theme coming in, was really cool. And we have this like moment of like everyone's coming together, everyone's working. We get the heroic theme that we're used to when we're about to do something big. But it's the prisoners' music, and it's not the droney, arpeggiated, synthy thing. It's a combination of orchestra and everyone coming together. I don't know. I thought that was really well done. I like when we get the crossover themes in music. That's like the opposite of a pet peeve for me. What's the like a fun thing? A pet fave for me is when you cross the themes on top of each other and it makes sense to the scene, and it's just like, here are these two opposite elements working together musically. I thought that was very nice.
Yeah.
How about New Guy? How about New Guy?
Poor New Guy.
For like, he's there for like a total of 10 minutes. And he immediately like starts participating in a rebellion that he didn't know existed until like 2 seconds ago. He like immediately grabs the thing and like zaps the guy.
Yeah. And I love how they're like all these rebelling people like shoot the new guy. They like zap him, like punish him. He's not hurting us. And then immediately that character who started climbing, that we kind of got to know was in on the plan from the beginning, like, gone immediately.
Yeah.
Like, no care,
A lot of climbing going on in Andor's character trajectory.
Yeah. Right. But I think it all goes with this, like, that again, I keep harkening back to this realism of, like, in a lot of the Star Wars sci-fi fantasy-esque of this all, it's like, the good guys can't get hurt. they're the good guys. The stormtroopers always miss, kind of a
Right.
thing. And here's just like, no, people are just getting picked off by random.
Right.
Like, no one's safe, you know. I thought it was a really great scene and with really,
It
really
was.
great music.
It's awesome.
The Andor theme goes on top of lots of themes. I
Mhm.
also heard it sort of like I always hear it in Luthen's theme too, which we heard in the credits.
Mhm.
With all again lots of suspensions and stuff where it's like and it's like
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I really like I like how it turned up in the credits where it sort of plays, it sort of repeats, or it's sort of like a full statement with like a beginning and an end, and we hear like I feel like Luthen's is the theme with the most classically like suspension-y, like the most adagio-y. Actually, I wouldn't. I don't want to overuse that reference because I don't actually think it's really. I don't think everything that has strings and arpeggios is adagio-y, but like the suspensions in Luthen's theme are what really stand out to me. One Oh, I was going to say one other thing with the voice of God over the intercom is since the accent of Kino is different than the accents of the other people that have previously been on the mic. It was interesting to hear his speech, his manner of speech, like his accent, but with like in the register and with other aspects of the sound. It was a sound that of the usual people speaking over the mic. So it was like same, different. I'm bad at describing sounds, but it's a boop 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 sound starting low and each successive one going higher.
Boop, boop, boop.
Boop, boop. Boop, 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 boop. In TLJ, it's heard when Poe is looking at the display showing the fueling. Oh, the fueling up sounds. Oh yeah, fueling up sounds are very satisfying. What?
I love this stream so much. We all just go boop 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 in different ways, but we all get it, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, the fueling sounds." Yes, I love you all so much.
Yeah.
It's mutual.
Good times.
Uh,
I'm gonna see if I can find that boop boop boop.
Okay.
yeah, I need to. Now I gotta do it.
So
I
I'm gonna
gotta find
keep
the boop boops.
okay. So the voice of God revealed to be a nervous, gray-clad person speaking into a PA mic, and his voice is all plain, which of course is very Wizard of Oz, very man behind the curtain. And it's interesting to see him try to hang on to his final grasps of what he thinks is like he could have the situation under control, where Power doesn't panic. He's clearly panicking. He's like, burn a firewall
Right.
around it, fry the whole level, make the epicenter 5-2. Like he's just like, I don't know what to do. Just fry the whole level. Like you can
Yeah.
see like, that's probably what happened the first time
Yes.
too. Like,
Yes.
yeah, and it's just I so appreciate that we got to hear him without the voice modulator and sort of see that both sides of it, both the really scary side and the man behind the curtain. And again, like sound is such a powerful I don't know, sound is used in such like a powerfully manipulative like way in this show. I really appreciate that. Like there it's like very clear. You don't have to delve too deep to see what is happening here. It immediately like strips this character or the people behind the PA system. It kind of strips their their sense of power or like our interpretation
Power
or our
doesn't
perception.
panic.
Yeah. James, what were you saying? You're like, sounds like you.
No, nothing.
Oh, okay. So yeah. Yay, sound. Any other?
Oh, I know that sound. That's the beeping sound.
Wait. What
That's
what
the
timestamp?
in Last Jedi, it's
Oh, in Last Jedi.
like 107:12.
Oh, you're like in Last Jedi right now.
I'm trying to find it too.
Wow.
Isn't that so nice? We have Disney Plus where you can just like access all of Star Wars whenever we want.
Kind of, but
That
you
is
have to
nice.
stream it from a site, so I don't actually find that very fun.
Oh,
Stream it from
I
a
hear it.
site
I
with a
found it.
terrible interface.
Yeah.
The interface sucks.
That's
Yeah.
a nice sound. Is that what you're talking about? The it's like a boop boop boop, but it's like with a couple, maybe throw a couple R's in those boops, like like that.
You're doing kind of like a pigeon coo into your hand.
Yeah.
Like that.
I think we know what kind of music we can use for our outro.
Our outro.
There you
I mean, we got our outro. Oh my goodness.
Well, does anyone have
See,
final
this is just-
thoughts
this-
about?
this- Yeah, well, I just want to go ahead and say this to our watchers that the engagement level with our audience on these streams is such that if you write in our chat, you could possibly get all four of us to make pigeon sounds on the stream. So
We will
I
take
just want
prompt
to encourage
suggestions.
encourage audience interaction. You might get us to do something as ridiculous as that. So,
Oh wait, before we
so.
end, I do want to point this comment out because I think it's insightful and I agree with it. So Matthew says it could be going back to Mon Mothma. It could be a scandal because while Davos Golden is rich, he isn't considered at the same stature as Mon Mothma. That is why he doesn't want her money. He wants to raise his family to a higher class.
Yeah, seems
Good.
like it.
That's good.
Good point.
Yeah, and that's usually like where, especially if you've been watching the House of the Dragon, that's essentially how it works, right? Like Mon Mothma is the senator for Shangela, right? Like she's a person of power on that planet. So clearly it would be advantageous for anybody to be betrothed to one of her offspring. And that's kind of how it goes to House of Dragon. It's like everybody's always looking for some way to marry their kid into the royalty, like at some point, because so, yeah.
I haven't seen that, but I'll take. But yeah, that from what you say, that sounds about right.
Yep.
Question: How do we say this planet's name? Chandrila?
Well,
Chandrila?
they're saying Chandrila.
Yeah, I think it's like Chandrila.
'Cause I feel like Dolvo came in and said something like weird, like Chandrila or something like something way different. I'll have to go back.
Could be
I
a
just thought
class
that was
thing.
interesting.
Like
Yeah.
Chandrila?
Yeah.
Achanji. Yeah.
Shout out to the opening credits as always for a new theme with a new thing on
That's
top
great.
of it. And
Well,
for,
maybe
It
that
was nice.
maybe that can be the last thing we talk about because there was some speculation on your Twitter.
It wasn't speculation. It was someone saying, "Oh, why does it remind?" I'll tell.
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't want to read too much into it.
discussion
It definitely
about
wasn't
it.
speculation. It was just,
Well, I
Catherine
think
said.
Speculation about the intent of the way that it's scored, I think.
What's that?
I don't think there was speculation in it. I think it was just. I'll put the tweet up there. Hey, Star Wars Music Minute. I felt the first two notes of the Andor intro this week were very Star Warsy. It just sounded like the theme or something. Is that
I'm
just
talking
me?
about that. I'm talking about that YouTube clip that person offered, where that person speculated that the composer is developing the theme every week in conjunction with Andor's character development. And I don't know.
Well,
how
the
much
composer
I-
has confirmed that many times. It's like one of the things he said in interviews is like the theme is bespoke for every episode, is like supposed to reflect sort of what's happening in the episode.
Yeah, but that's a different thing than saying that the theme gets more developed each week because Andor is developing. That's a different. I would say I agree with that.
I don't
Not
agree with that.
No, I agree with what you just said that the composer said, right?
Oh,
Like,
oh, oh,
obviously,
yeah, yeah.
obviously I agree because the composer said it. But but what I mean is, like, to me, it like clearly does reflect what's happening in the episode itself.
Mhm.
But I think you and I agree, which is like, I don't think it gets more developed as Andor gets more developed, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I think
it just gets redeveloped,
Yeah.
recontextualized. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that video we were watching was saying like every week another instrument
Instrument
is
is added. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I'm like, I don't
It
know if
wasn't.
that's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll show you
I will. Yeah,
on screen.
yeah.
What,
Go ahead.
if people want to know what we're talking about this video from Screen Crush, Andor episode 10 breakdown every Star Wars Easter egg and meaning explained. And you know, to their credit, I don't think they don't try to spin that wild of a theory. They
No.
don't spend that much time on it because they're going through lots of different
Yeah.
points. But at the beginning, this person does mention the intro music and saying like James said, every week it seems like they're adding a new instrument, and it's like Andor being developed. But the thing is, like, we've heard that's not really the arc of it. Because this episode, the intro was noticeably like softer. It's more more stripped
Sparse,
down than it was
right?
last
Yeah.
week. So it's not
Yeah.
just like going up.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's what
Yeah,
I
and
was
because
saying in
we're
terms of
all
speculation.
yeah, and because we're all musicians, we're able to hear that nuance. But maybe somebody who is just kind of, doesn't have any musical training might just be like, oh yeah, the easiest way to describe what I'm sensing from this is instrument. It's almost like any musical word could have been used there.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of like
But-
yeah.
But yeah, Catherine Nina, I think was right on in that there is some like, whether intentional or not, I think the theme definitely sounds a little bit more quote unquote like traditionally Star Warsian than other weeks. Not maybe
I
not
don't
the most
necessarily
Star
agree.
Warsy. To me, to my ears, it feels definitely more Star Warsy than some other weeks for sure.
I think
like
which I think is totally fine. I think it's just
yeah, that's like the
it's
most
not.
nebulous description.
I don't
you could-
disagree.
yeah.
I just don't. It just didn't affect me that way. So it's not. She's not wrong. If it sounded
No,
more Star Wars
no.
to her, then okay,
It did.
cool.
Yeah, and to me it did too. Once I
Fair.
went back and listened to it, I was like, yeah, I can hear how that sounds a little bit more John Williams-y, maybe. I'll put a big old maybe there.
But then
So,
again, we don't know
it's
what Star Wars sounds
it's
like.
the
to
leap.
her.
It's the great leap.
Mhm.
Da-da-da. It's the leap. The Star Wars leap.
That's why it's so difficult to, unless you like talk to someone in depth about what do you mean when you think something refers to this thing. We don't have a shared definition of this other thing. Like I think we can take it for granted what Star Warsy implies.
Yeah.
Which is, why I ask
Yeah,
it on the show.
If I had a
Yeah.
a nickel for how many times we've had useless discussions about what is or isn't Star Wars or
Yeah.
what's very Star Warsy, you know what I mean? Like how
It's an
often do we
important
have
question
to
to
talk about
interrogate from multiple angles because
Right, but
It's
it's
great.
but it's and it is like aimless or not aimless, but answerless. You know, it's, like,
exactly it
impossible
is
to-
answerless.
yeah, for sure.
kind of the
But it's not
meme about
Andor,
Star
it's
Wars
not
fans.
Andorless though. It's
Correct.
answerless, but it's not Andorless for sure.
The way I almost responded to that. Catherine is awesome. This is not like
Yeah.
I'm really glad. I don't know. I love hearing observations like that because it made me go back and listen and go like, okay, I am not necessarily getting like a Star Warsy over like it sounds Star Warsy to me because Andor is Star Wars now. And so it was like I'm too deep into
Yeah,
Andor
yeah.
for me to separate like
Yeah.
it sounds like Andor and Andor is part of Star Wars.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this is also part like I think it's part of everyone's like initial what do you call it exposure to the franchise. But I know you got to go, but we should probably just quickly like the Andor theme starts at like bum 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 bum, right? So those first three notes could be like that connection to what could be being heard here, right? Which is like bum bum ba da dum bum, right? Like you could like your ear if you're watching Star Wars could be thinking like, oh, I just want it to go there, right? Because that's what I'm already thinking about Star Wars. I hear the three notes, right? So the first three notes are like the first three. Actually, they're not the first three notes. They're the second, third, and fourth note of the first theme. It doesn't have the pickup from boom, bum. It doesn't have the fifth pickup, but yeah, it definitely has some notes that could be referenced to the first theme for sure.
Sure. I don't hear it any more than I already do in the Andor theme
Yeah.
in many other
Yeah.
times it comes up. But like, sure. You know, it goes or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I also hear it in my humps all the time. She's got me spending. Yeah, I mean, it's the same three notes in my humps as well. So I think there's a clear connection between the Black Eyed Peas and the first theme. So.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Andre 3000 is actually Nicholas Bertal.
Well, if anything,
No. Will I Am. Will I Am
is actually.
If anything, the opening reminded me because it was like an oboe playing an A. I was like, oh, am I like hearing that? It makes me want to go like, oh, I should start tuning.
Yeah. It's got that orchestra warm up feel to it.
Yeah. Like what
I love that sound. I remember the first time I went to a. Sorry, we're like just getting. You have to leave, Xanthe, don't you?
It's okay. You can finish your thought.
Okay, I just remember the first. I wasn't in orchestras like up until high school. We didn't have an orchestra at my high school. We had we only had bands, so I never was like around a significant amount of string players. And I remember I joined a youth orchestra at the Eastman School, and I remember the first day and I'm a percussionist, so I don't play a string instrument. So like obviously I'd never like really heard like a whole orchestra, and my parents didn't like ever bring me to the orchestra. I just remember that first day. I just remember being like wowed by the tuning, like just being.
Oh, that's awesome.
I mean, I know that seems you know what I mean. Like that's probably you've heard that a million times since you were a child, right? But for me, like I walked in as a 9th grader into a youth orchestra for the first time. I was just like, whoa, like. This is amazing, you know? Like, orchestras have always been kind of alien to me because it's, like, not part of my foundational music upbringing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's this. But you hear,
Yeah,
like,
it's
all
amazing
these people
balance.
tuning at once to the same note. Yeah, I think, when I hear that out of context, it gives me, like, it's a positive association,
Yeah.
typically. Yeah. Where it just takes me back to like being in the zone and of orchestra, and also from an audience perspective, like about to watch a concert. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Anyway, we'll be back next week to talk about episode.
Well, it turns out
11.
that's probably not the sound, but we'll figure it out next
Yeah,
week,
we will.
Gary.
Yeah. Well, Gary put in the chat where it is, so we can look it up later. Anyway, all right. See you all. Thank you for joining us for another Band Batch chat, and we'll be back next week with episode 11. Have a good rest of your day.